Caleb Kentron.
Hey everybody, what's up Greens, what's up Internet? I got a new book I read, Gore Vidal History of the National Security State. Before I tell you about this book, I want to tell you about Julian Assange, who I seen holding up this book. Julian Assange is an American hero. Off top, he's a hero to the world. He was held up in the Ecuadorian embassy. There was false charges brought against him, and he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, skipping bail for 7 years, worried that the powers that be were going to come after him for releasing war documents of war, exposing war crimes. And during his time in the Ecuadorian embassy, WikiLeaks, his company, is the founder of WikiLeaks, published the 33,000 emails that everybody was in a fuss about during the 2016 election. And we've all experienced this like Russian hack hysteria as a result of it. But ultimately, Julian Assange received the 33,000 emails of Hillary Clinton's. He was given them by a DNC staffer named Seth Rich. So it was not a hack, it was a leak. Somebody from inside the DNC was upset that Bernie Sanders was being troubled by the DNC and gave Julian Assange Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. And the next thing you know, he's held up in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. 7 years going. But he was arrested unlawfully about a couple weeks ago. He was shipped out to a UK detention facility for terrorists, where they hold terrorists. He's basically in solitary confinement. His arraignment isn't for like another 10 days. Nobody knows how he's doing. He's not allowed any visitors. He can't talk to his lawyers. The treatment that he's receiving there is unreported. He needed medical attention when he left. He suffered severe psychological and physical troubles being in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. So this man Julian Assange, he's a world hero. He ruled the world for a brief moment in time, and he used his power to change our path and grant us the abilities to right our wrongs, and did all these great things for people. And during his arrest, he was holding this book by Gore Vidal, The History of the National Security State, which is a peculiar book to be holding up. I mean, it's peculiar to hold up a book during arrest. During his trial, they had like a hop and a skip of a trial, and he was reading this book during his trial. Seemed pretty undeterred, seemed pretty undisturbed, because, I mean, 7 years. He knows exactly what he's doing. Dude's a mastermind. For real mastermind. The WikiLeaks said days before his arrest that the Ecuadorian government was planning to evict him from the embassy. The Ecuadorian government responded saying, like, no, it's cool. There's no eviction going on. And then, like, days later, there's an eviction. WikiLeaks is 100% factual. They've been right about everything they've ever published. They have not one publication of a false document. And I'm not saying that in time, who knows what will happen with WikiLeaks will happen. As of today, 100% accuracy. So the fact that, people want to debate about the emails and where they came from instead of the contents is a huge example of people will pay attention to the master and not the lesson. If the content of the emails were to be exposed, I believe that we would see some swift and dramatic changes in our government for the better. We talk about the emails all the time in the media, in the streets. 33,000 emails of Hillary Clinton. We don't talk about the content. We talk about where they came from. The content of the emails is 30 years of the Clinton crime syndicate. We don't talk about the content. We talk about where they came from and how. But, don't shoot the messenger here. There's injustices to be reported inside the emails, And the fuss is not to be made over how they were exposed, but what's in them. Refocusing our attention to what's in the emails, not how they became surfaced. The fact that they were on private servers to begin with was unlawful, just like the arrest of Julian Assange was unlawful. And there's reports that the International Monetary Fund just gave the country of Ecuador something like $4 billion. We're talking about a $4 billion payoff to evict Julian Assange. This is a $4 billion man. An incredible man, founder of WikiLeaks, holding this book as he was arrested and evicted after 7 years of isolation in the Ecuadorian embassy, and he is now serving in solitary confinement, in isolation, in the UK detention center where they hold terrorists. This man is a hero, an awarded hero. He has like a dozen awards for being a peacekeeper, a truth teller, and a hero. He is now in a UK detention facility for exposing war crimes in Iraq perpetrated by the United States military, which is what they talk about in this book, the military-industrial complex, but also for his role in exposing the 33,000 emails during the 2016 presidential election. So about this book, there's two things that I took from this book. One is that the presidential elections, some of us might have suspected before, are a show. They're not real. Any real person has an ability to impact the presidential election. Candidates have the ability to change the outcomes of the elections by their presences. However, the presidential elections in the United States are a big show. Voting fraud is rampant. And I've been hip to the Bush administration having, each of the Bush elections were controversial between Gore and Kerry, and a lot of people question the validity of those elections. In this book, he talks about going all the way back to FDR. Gore Vidal says that Franklin Delano Roosevelt paid for his election, that he bought his votes. It was an illegitimate election when FDR was elected. Goes as far as to call him a dictator, which is not always a bad thing. Dictatorial rule is not to be demonized. Dictatorial rule is necessary in some points in history, and is actually, when you have the right person, a great benefit to society. That is why benevolent dictators are a thing. You hear of benevolent dictators, not just dictators. Some dictators can be bad. You never want your power going into the hands of the wrong person, but if you hand dictatorial rule in the hands of the right person, you're going to see profound change for the better, because those people with good intentions are gonna take everybody along with all that good. They're taking everyone with them and doing those good things. And so you have people like FDR, who by this book was a dictator in the United States of America and used his power for great good with great responsibility. But he also, credits Abraham Lincoln with being a dictator too at the time, and a couple other presidents, United States of America, who during their time in service wielded dictatorial powers and used them for the greater good. And that's how America became so great. And so there's that. Presidential elections in the United States of America are a big show. And, the 2016 election, everybody, talked about Russia so much that it really discredited our elections. The fact that we even talked about Russia being able to impact our elections. The mere notion that they could is indication of faulty elections. So Gore Vidal, this dude wrote Ben-Hur. You might have heard of the movie Ben-Hur. He was born in the privilege, high-profile person. He was born in the privilege. Al Gore is in his bloodline. He talks about, just the high-profile people that he grew up around, including, I think Jack Kennedy, he said, was one of them. So this dude was big in Hollywood. all his life. Gore Vidal, big in Hollywood, and then after Hollywood, he would write his books. And this dude is an example of a high-profile person who used his power, like Donald Trump, who used his power and his privileges with activism, with good intentions. He saw the silver lining. He saw the corruption and injustices. He was not silent. He was a high-profile person, could do anything he wanted to in the world, and he used his voice to speak of the injustices that he's seen in an effort to create a more just, a more secure, more equal world. Maybe take that utopian step so we all have good things. So this dude, Gore Vidal, in this book, is written by Paul J. Paul J, over 5 different occurrences, interviews this dude. So this book is a collection of some excerpts from like 5 different interviews this dude did. This dude, Paul J, of Gore Vidal. I think Gore Vidal passed away recently at the age of 83, so he's no longer alive. But Gore Vidal, born of a high-profile person, born of privilege, used every bit of his effort and his energy to speak, to be heard about the world in the way that he sees it, for the better of everything and everybody. But it talks about the Kennedys, the atomic bomb, the dropping of the atomic bomb, and how that happened after FDR, and everything about how Truman was, he had no tact and dropped the atomic bomb for basically no reason. Talks about the foundation of the national security state after World War II. Talks about 9/11, World War II, 9/11. Talks about World War II and 9/11, World War II and 9/11. A whole lot in this book. The military-industrial complex, the U.S. media, and Washington. It describes Washington and Hollywood as being cooperative in the whole effort of guiding the American people into endless war. Use the word symbiotic, which is my favorite word, which is basically like a symbiotic relationship, where it's like one thing in the relationship helps the other thing in the relationship helps the other, because it could be anything on a symbiotic level. The best thing that I heard is like barnacles on whales. Like the barnacles get to travel around on the whales, and the barnacles help the whales on their skin or something like that. Symbiotic relationship. Washington and Hollywood, they help each other out. They serve each other. They are a big power keg. And it references Ohio a lot. Ohio is very much in this book, and as it goes in Ohio, so goes the country. We are a swing state. We are a big, powerful state. In the presidential elections, if you want to call them elections, the big presidential election show, Ohio is always a huge factor. And they mentioned about Dennis Kucinich in this. Cleveland, congressman from Cleveland, former mayor of Cleveland, Dennis Kucinich. He points out Kucinich is one of the people in the government who's not there to collect a check and to take kickbacks for their campaign. He has a job in mind. He's there to do his job. He does his job. He does the job of congressman. He does his job as a politician. This book points out how corruption in the government works as far as the money flows and goes, about how money can be used to pay for political sway and policies, and about how there are people in the government still, and maybe plenty of people in the government still, that they're not there to cash a check out, but are genuinely interested in serving the public, have good intentions, have a right head on their shoulders, and are there to work, there to do the job. Those people exist. They're out there. They're in the government. But there's a lot of bad people in the government too, and that's what Gore Vidal kind of speaks about. Is the history of the national security state, which he pretty much describes as having started after World War II in the United States of America, where we see our Hollywood and Washington begin to really guide us along a path of destruction. And it's, he talks about 9/11 so much in here that I gotta also mention that I think it sucks that Julian Assange is suffering um, from having exposed to war crimes committed in Iraq, because the Iraq War, I think most people around here know that we shouldn't have been in Iraq. I think most of the world knows that 9/11 was a false flag event. I think most Americans, not all Americans, but most Americans nowadays recognize 9/11 as an inside job. Like jet streams don't melt steel beams, and it sucks that we have to live in the world. We have to live in the post 9/11 world, and there's a lot of research to be done on 9/11, and everything's so shadowy and such a cover up. And this book has got 9/11 on blast. It's a big part of it, and I do a lot of reading about the stuff, and I do all my research, and at the end of the day, all signs point to Israel and the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, as the mastermind of 9/11. Though 9/11 was a false flag event, like the Reichstag was, it was a big scare to get the United States military to invade Iraq and essentially a few other countries around the Middle East, so they could be destabilized, and the country of Israel can take that land that's destabilized around there. And the whole 9/11 was a false flag event for the state of Israel so that they could grab land, use the United States military to grab land. It had nothing to do with the Muslim world, or the Muslims versus Christians, and Islamophobia served a big purpose for the agenda of Israel and the Prime Minister of Israel to demonize a different culture and get the United States military to go over there and wreck shit so that they can clean house and take the land. I hate it. I think it's a terrible plan. It sucks. It's stupid. It's weak. It's fucking for what, like few million people, like over there, like you're just gonna wreck and cause all this disruption, like for whatever reason, for whatever like snaky, like behind the scenes, like top secret like agendas that are being pushed and propelled over there, like for all these weapon sales and everything that's happening. Like, it sucks. It's stupid. We should have never been in Iraq. I think most people knows that, and it sucks because Julian Assange is suffering his fucking life because of exposure of war crimes. Him and Chelsea Manning both suffering for overexposing war crimes in the Middle East, like at the hands of the United States military, who would have never been over there had the country of Israel not had infiltrated our forces, our Senate and our Congress, and essentially the hands of our military. I usually don't speak on it too much. Reading this book, it just is in my mind so heavy. It's everything that we are dealing with and that we have to, all these troubles, financial problems, our student debt, our medical woes. We don't have free health care. Our roads are decaying, our infrastructure, our people in the streets are dying. We have some of the biggest poverty rates in the fucking world. Child poverty, like children go hungry in this state by the millions, in this country by the millions, and we're off track, majorly off track. And this book's talking about how Washington and Hollywood are in bed together, and I know from what I've seen that 9/11 was an Israeli hack for their land. It seems like this all could be an easy fix, but somehow we still have 40% of our Congress facilitated with dual citizenship in Israel. And if I had the power to, I would purge Congress of all seats, who hold dual citizenship with Israel. I would put an embargo. I would put an embargo on the state of Israel. I would hold Benjamin Netanyahu accountable for the attacks at 9/11. You know, since the United States' whole like method and mode was pretty much like, you know, whoever is suspected of carrying out the 9/11 attacks, we go after them. I would stand by that same conviction. I suspect Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel was the perpetrator, and I would put a ban on any campaigners, any political interests that hold dual citizenship in Israel until we sort 9/11 out. I would not let them serve in office, period. As president, I would put a ban on all political interests with dual citizenship in Israel from holding office. I would not let anyone holding dual citizenship with Israel hold political office until we get 9/11 sorted out, until Benjamin Netanyahu is held accountable for his role in the 9/11 attacks, and also immediately purge the Senate and Congress of all offices holding dual citizenship with Israel. On Gore Vidal, a man born of privilege who used his higher power and his higher standing to speak the truth, to be a true pillar to society, I would purge Congress of all dual Israeli citizenship and hold Benjamin Netanyahu accountable for the attacks on 9/11 that ultimately led to the war crimes committed in Iraq by the United States military that were exposed by Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning. And I would also have the State Department of Justice investigate thoroughly the Uranium One transactions where Hillary Clinton approved the sale of like 1/3 of our uranium to the country of Russia for nuclear warheads, which are obviously a large threat to humanity, and charge them with crimes against humanity. But I'm flying a little off the rails here. I'm a little emotional. I read this book like 3 days ago too, so as far as the content of the book, it's not exactly like so fresh in my mind, but sometime around Earth Day I had it wrapped up and just not getting to doing a review. I think I'm gonna reread this book and I'm gonna re-review it. Just a quick recap. Alright, thanks for watching my video, 22 minutes in. I love y'all. Have a nice day.